What's going on, guys? This is Imagine It. Today I'm going to be breaking down my most recent sample pack, Kaleidoscope Neuro DNB, which is now available on Loopmasters and on their cloud-based platform, SOUNDCLOUD. So the way we're going to do this breakdown today is I'm going to talk about the 3 folders that you can find within the pack, and then I'm also going to talk about these 4 loops that I've created right here. And these loops are created using loops and one-shots and presets that are found within the pack. So before we get into it, there's a couple things that I want to mention. First, I'm not going to be using any plugins today, such as, Serum or things like that. I am going to tell you how I made these sounds and the plugins that I use, but I'm not going to go into the actual creation of them and do a walkthrough because this video would be extremely long if I did that. But I am going to do separate videos on how you can use those plugins that I'm going to mention. The second thing is that I do want to say this pack started from, again, just Foley recordings. For those of you that know the Glitch Kitchen pack that I put out, that pack started from Kitchen Foley. This pack followed a similar ethos where I just took Foley recordings and processed them in so many different ways. Made wavetables out of them to make synths and basses, made glitchy effects, made atmospheres, all those different things. Everything that you hear in this pack, with the exception of a couple hi-hats, kicks and snares, and claps, everything was made straight from Foley recordings. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we've got in here. To start, we're going to take a look at our Atmos folder. Here in the Atmos folder, we have a collection of atonal and tonal atmospheres. The atonal atmospheres are great background elements. There's no real musicality in these atmospheres at all. However, they do provide great background ambiance for your track and are great in moments like, breakdowns, intros, outros, things like that. To make these sounds, I took Foley recordings, the Foley recordings in this pack, and I stretched them out, manipulated them in different ways, threw some reverb, threw delays, all kinds of different things on them, just to get a lot of movement, a lot of space, a lot of depth. I'm going to show you a couple right now so you get an idea. Yes, those are just a couple of examples of some of the atonal atmospheres that you can find in the pack. And again, these are great for creating ambiance and space in your track. So over here in the tonal folder, we have a selection of tonal atmospheres, all in different keys. And these were made using PadShop Pro. So for those of you that aren't familiar with PadShop Pro, it's a granular synth. And what you have to do is you have to load in a sound for the synth to, granulate. I don't know if that's even a right word or not, but whatever. Yeah, you load in a sound and then you can create some stuff out of it. And it's really, really powerful tool for making pads. I love using it so much. And I'm going to make a separate video on how to use that plugin as well. I do want to mention, though, that the sounds that I used to create the pads are actually the synth one-shots that you can find in this pack. But anyway, these are all just a selection of pads that I thought were just really cool that came from those initial sounds. So I'm going to play a couple for you just to give you an idea. Yes, you get the idea. But just really nice, lush pads to fill up some space, add a little bit of harmonic interest. Great for intros and outros and breakdowns and things like that. Or just to thicken up whatever section you want. And of course, add some space too with all the reverb and whatnot. Let's go take a look at what else we have. So over here in the bass one-shot folder, we can find a selection of bass pads, FM basses, lead basses, neurofunk basses, growl basses, a lot of different things. I really wanted to capture the different styles of drum and bass and just kind of throw it into this mosh pit of different sounds. All of these basses were made using Serum, and almost exclusively just in Serum 2. Didn't use anything outside the box too much, with the exception of maybe OTT and like a saturation tool, maybe a FabFilter Saturn. Perhaps I'll do a video on how to make different kinds of basses for different kinds of needs at some point in the future as well. Anyway, let's go through a couple of these. Let me give you a sense of what you can expect. So again, just a lot of cool things going on in there. And yeah, these were all made in Serum. So back in the one-shots folder, we'll go take a look at the drums. And here we have claps, Foley, hi-hats, kicks, percussion, and snares. So here in the claps folder, there's 15 different claps. And these were made by me just sitting in front of my mic, clapping away like I just heard the most powerful, inspiring speech on the planet. And then I went through and took the different claps, layered them in different ways, and pulled out what sounded great. Processed them with a little bit of saturation, some EQ, compression. Nothing super creative, just very, very technical, usual mixing stuff. Here's a couple for you. So back in the drums one-shots, we have a Foley folder, and all these Foley sounds were captured using a Tascam DR05 mic. It's a little $100 mic. Great high quality mic. I really recommend it. I strongly recommend it. I used it to capture all the sounds used in Glitch Kitchen as well. These sounds range from garage tools to random chain link stuff. And then also took a trip up to Lake Tahoe, California with my friends and got some recordings of me playing in the snow, digging around, getting some crunches, just some cool textures like that. I'll play a couple for you. Yeah, just a pretty traditional kind of Foley sounds. So here in the hi-hats folder, we have a whole bunch of different hi-hats, and these were all made using two different techniques. One being just simple audio manipulation from the original Foley sounds, and then I also used a selection of white noise settings in Serum, and then just used an envelope to create little, hisses and things like that to replicate hi-hat. So a couple of these hi-hats also have reverb on them. The reverb, I think, adds a sense of space and just helps the sound a little bit more organic and natural and just overall more interesting. Anyway, before I absolutely go on and on and on about organic quality and the things you can do with that, let me show you a couple hi-hats. Pretty traditional hi-hats, nothing super crazy, but all sound pretty good in tandem with the other drums. So here in the kick folder, we can find 15 different kicks, and each kick was made using Sonic Academy's Kick 2. For those of you who aren't familiar, Kick 2 is a drum synthesizer / sampler, and the way it works is the plugin starts with a sine wave that you can shape, then you can stack transient samples, noise samples, all kinds of things like that to create a characteristic that you want or create the tone. Really high quality plugin. You can also stack harmonics on it too, which is really neat. Great plugin. Highly recommend it, and I will do a demo video on that in the future as well. Anyway, here's a couple of those kicks. So the way I went about making these kicks in Kick 2 was getting that sine wave, that fundamental, real dialed in, and then stacking acoustic layers like hi-hats, acoustic kicks, things like that above that fundamental, so that way it has the preciseness in the low end, but it has the interesting characteristic on top. And you just got this nice blend, this nice hybrid of preciseness and an interesting characteristic. Over here in the percussion was made using the Foley sounds as well, just different manipulation techniques. I used Battery 4 almost exclusively for these sounds. I just pitch them down, envelope shaping, all kinds of different things. I'll play a couple for you right now. So yeah, just a couple random, clicks and ticks and beeps and boops and things like that. Kind of a cool miscellaneous folder for different percussion sounds. And over here in the snare folder, we have 15 different snares. And the snares were all made in Kick 2 as well. However, a couple of them I did do a bit of processing in Logic itself by taking some pre-existing acoustic snare samples and other snares that I've made in the past, and some claps as well too, and layered them with the snares that I made in Kick 2 just to make them a little bit more aggressive or a little bit more interesting. This is what they sound like. So that does it for the drum one-shots, and I do want to reiterate that I will do a separate video on how to make kicks and snares using Sonic Academy's Kick 2. So moving on, back in the one-shots folder, we are now down to the effects, and here in the effects folder, we have downlifters, glitch bites, impacts, and uplifters. So in the downlifters folder, we have a selection of downlifters, and these were all made using Serum. We've got a couple in here that are more white noisy. We've got a couple that are rhythmic. Some are saws, just a lot of different things going on. I'll play a couple for you right now to give you an idea. So a whole lot of different things going on in there, perfect for ending sections of your song. Here in the Glitch Bytes folder, we can find 50 different Glitch Byte sounds, and these are just really simple, quick little glitch sounds. Let me just play a couple for you. So yeah, just, some random kind of ear candy sounds to throw in your tracks. These were made using a variety of different glitch plugins. I used Glitch Machine's Hysteresis, Fracture, Buff Eater, and I also used Logic's stock glitch plugin. I believe it's called like Fat Step. Let's take a look really quick. Yeah, Fat Effects and Step Effects. I used those two to create some glitch stuff as well. So here in the impacts folder, there's 20 different impacts, all of which were made using the kicks that you can find in this pack, some Foley and some glitch sounds as well. Here's a couple for you. So again, just kicks, glitch effects, a lot of reverb, of course, some low thud, and then just some group processing, saturation, EQ, compression, things like that. And then in the uplifters folder, we have 20 different uplifters, and these were all made in Serum as well. So some traditional uplifters, tension builders, things like that. Nothing too crazy. So finally, in the one-shots folder, we're going to hit our synths. And here we have a selection of lead, pad, pluck, and synth one-shots. For these one-shots, I took a very different approach. I just bounced down single notes of each sound because I wanted to give you guys flexibility with throwing in these sounds into a sampler so you can manipulate them in different ways. And of course, I created the sampler instruments that you can find in the pack, for Battery, EXS24, and Contact, which I'll get into later. So here in the leads, we have a whole bunch of different things. And again, just simple single note run-throughs. Perfect for sampling. Very simple. Wanted to give you guys as much flexibility as possible so you can create your own sounds with these sounds. So that does it for the one-shots. Let's head on over to our loops. So in the loops, it's exactly the same thing, just this time in loop format. Over here in the basses, we have a selection of, I believe, 30 different bass loops. We've got some pads again, some FM basses, some neuro-y stuff, some growls, and just different riffs, things like that for you guys to choose from. Let me run through a couple right now. So yeah, riffs, things like that. It's the same sounds, all made from the same presets that you can find in the pack. So over here in the drums folder, we have full drum, kick and snare, percussion, and top loops. And these three right here, kick and snare, percussion, and tops, those were all broken down versions of the full drum loops I'm going to show you right now. So here's a couple of the full drum loops. And then of course here in kick and snare, it's just kick and snare versions of those loops. And then the percussion. And those are great for throwing on top of your drums, whether you are using the loops from the pack or using your own drum loops that you've programmed, whatever. These drum perks are really good supporting elements for your drums and just kind of fill out the drums a bit. Here in the tops, it's the same thing. So just some top loops to fill up the upper end of the frequency spectrum for your drums. Back in the loops folder, we'll go take a look at the effects. And here I just have some glitch byte effects. And for those of you, again, that are familiar with Glitch Kitchen, this is very similar to what you can find in that pack as far as the glitch byte loops go. Let me go through a couple of them for you. All these loops were made using Battery 4 and just taking bits and pieces of the different glitch byte sounds and then putting them into rhythmic context. I kind of go into this a little bit in the Glitch Kitchen video, the Glitch Kitchen breakdown video that I did. I'll include a link to that below. So back in loops, we'll go take a look at the synth loops. And we've got, of course, lead loops, pad loops, plucks, and synths. The leads are like chorus ideas, some verse ideas. I took more of an arrangement approach to these for the leads and the pads. And then the plucks are more arpeggiations. There's a couple in there that are just like nice little plucky ear candy sounds. And then the synths are just random synth sounds that I thought were really cool. Didn't really have any objective with them. Just make a sound, put it in some sort of context, musical context, see how it sounds, and take what I like. So let's go through these a little bit. Here's some leads. Here's a couple pads. So a lot of different things in there. Got some 2-chord progressions, 3-chord progressions, 4-chord progressions, and of course those different progressions based on the chords used are perfect for different arrangement types. A chorus might be 4 chords, a verse might be 3 chords, intro might be 2. Wanted to include, again, a lot of flexibility for you guys as far as arrangement goes. And then over here in the plucks, we've got a selection of different plucks. We've got some arpeggiations and ear candy plucks. Let me go through a couple of these for you. And then over here in the synths, finally, we have a selection of different synth sounds, and these consist of plucky chords, arpeggiations, single note tones. We got a thing with some fifths in here. There's just a lot of different things. So I'll just run through a couple of these too. And that does it for the synths. Cool, so that's the loops and the one-shots. So let's take a look at our final folder, which is the bonus folder. And in here you can find the MIDI files for the different loops that we just covered. Everything from bass loops to synth loops, leads, pads, plucks, synths. And then we also have sampler instruments, and I've included instruments for Battery 4, EXS24, and Contact 5. And in EXS24 and Contact 5, I also included the loops too, so that way you're not just working with one-shots, you can actually work with full-on loops and get real creative with those as well. So here in the Serum folder, we have presets and wavetables, and again, the presets in this pack are the same sounds that were used to create the one-shots and loops that I just played for you a minute ago. And then finally, there's a wavetable folder, and you can find the selection of wavetables. All the presets were made using all these wavetables as well, and these wavetables came from the Foley recordings that you can find in the pack as well too. On that note, I just wanted to keep this ethos alive that You can recycle sounds in so many different ways. I thought this pack was a really good exercise in having a small amount of source material and just doing absolutely as much as I can with it. Now that I've gone through the pack, let's take a look at these loops over here. So these loops cover different styles. I wanted to cover as much as I could and just give you a nice taste of what you can do just with what's inside the pack. I'm gonna go ahead and mute these 3 loops and start with our first one. Here we go. So all we've got going on here is just a simple kick and snare. And then I threw on a top loop. And then a percussion loop. And the percussion loop is very minimal. You can't really hear it, but it's adding a nice little roll in between the kick and snare every so often. Very, very traditional drum and bass arrangement. And then I added a bass loop. This bass loop is gritty. It's, you know, kind of a deep roller kind of sound. And then I added a downlifter. And then an uplifter. And if you're wondering, I did set up a couple side chains up here, and each side chain is color coded to the corresponding loop as well. And I did a little bit of processing, some EQ stuff, just a little bit, some top EQ, did some compression, or it's a sidechain compression, some EQ on the percussion, OTT on the bass, on the main bass here, a little bit of EQ as well, and then that pretty much does it. Some EQ on the other stuff too. These are just probably, just low cuts, high passes. So that does it for the first loop. Let's move on to our next one. Here we go. So again, same process, kick and snare. Pretty standard traditional neurofunk kind of groove. And then added some straight drums. An interesting contrast in groove. And then I added a percussion loop. Let me solo that percussion loop for you so you can hear it. So super subtle, really just a nice backbone for the tops, and then also some nice little in-between sounds. And then I added a bass riff. I think that riff works really well with the kick and snare groove, and the tones all work together. It just sounds kind of groovy and funky. I really liked making that one. And then of course our favorite downlifter. And then an uplifter. So that's our second loop. And again, a little bit of processing, EQ, sidechain EQ, same old. Pretty much the processes were the same, just adjusting the EQ to fit the general mix of each loop. Now for loop 3, here we go. So pretty fun loop here. This is driving. It's got the kick and snare again. Traditional kick and snare groove. And so for the tops this time we have a quarter note hat playing just straight quarter notes, and then we have the 16th shaker in the background providing a little bit more pace. Again, what the percussion in loop 2 is doing, and that is providing some support. And then here's a pluck loop. threw a bass under it. And I took one of the bass loops in the pack, and all I did was I shortened the length of the loop to get the note that I wanted from the beginning to keep it straight here for this first 4 bars. And then I went and took out the 3rd or 4th note of the loop and then looped it here for the last 4 bars to keep it cohesive with where the pluck is going in the arrangement and the musicality, and just keep it all together. To show you what I mean, let me pull this out right here, and I'm going to play the bass loop as is. That riff didn't really make sense with the pluck, so all I did was just bring it back like that, loop it. And have it make sense with the pluck arrangement. Again, simple downlifter. And then uplifter. So that makes up loop 3. And I think that one would be more of like a kind of a chorus or perhaps a verse too. Anyway, let's go ahead and mute that and move on to our final loop. Here we go. So this loop was made using a full drum loop, and this one is more of a liquid drum and bass kind of loop. Let me solo and play it for you. So we've got some hi-hats going on to provide some rhythmic movement, and then there's more of a rim shot snare this time, and of course in liquid drum and bass, the rim shot is like almost everything. It's kind of funny. So that's the drum, and then I layered on one of the Atmos one shots as a matter of fact. So nice and atmospheric, just a little bit of harmonic interest, nothing too crazy. And then here I added a bass to give the Atmos some backbone. And this time I used a preset from the pack actually, and this one is called Constant, and it's a bass pad. Let me solo it for you so you can hear what it sounds like by itself. So without going too much into the sound design process in Serum, I'll just cover really quick that I used one of the wavetables from the pack to put some detune on it, then added a saw, added a little bit of detune, and kept it at odd numbers. That way there's a middle signal to keep it chunky and mono compatible as well. Added a filter, took away the highs, added a little bit of air, so just some noise, just to make it sound a little bit grittier, and also maybe a little bit more analog too. Added a sub, added a bit of distortion, and then over here in the EQ, took away some stuff in the, like mid 1K, yeah, and then added a little bit of the highs too, just to boost the white noise a bit. Very nice layer for pads and atmospheres and things like that. It doesn't take away from the main idea, which is nice. And then I added another Serum preset. This time I added Fluorite, which is a pluck preset in the pack. Here's what it sounds like. I'm going to play a couple notes. So pretty traditional pluck sound. Got the pluck shape, some reverb, some delay, added some unison, used the quantized modulation on the sound, added some distortion, bit of chorusing, there's a delay, some compression, a little bit of EQ, and the cutoff affects the EQ and everything too. And over here in the macros section, the macros are set up very similarly across the different plucks. So, if you got some automation going on with the macros in your track, but you want to change out different plucks, it should all just work, and you don't have to, worry about weird, funky things happening to your sounds because the macros are all set up in a different way. So that's the pluck, and here's everything all together. With our downlifter, our favorite downlifter, it's the same one that I've been using. And then the uplifter this time is actually just a reversed version of this downlifter. And there you have it. So that pretty much covers it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful in some way. Massive shout out to everyone that's picked up the pack so far. Truly means a lot to me. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on it. And if you're working on any tracks right now with some of these sounds in there, I'd love to hear what you're working on. So you can reach out to me at iamimagineit@gmail.com. I'm going to include links below for you to access so you can easily get to me. Also, finally, if there's anything that I covered in this video that you'd like me to go more in depth on, or that you're just absolutely burning to know more about, you can reach out to me through Paramind's mentorship network and set up a one-on-one private session with me. I'll include the link below. Just go ahead and hit that link, set up a session, and you'll have access to a full hour of whatever sound design questions you have, and we can get you to where you want to be. For now, hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys soon. Take care.